Tonight's scripture reading comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 1 through 8. Now I would remind you, brothers and sisters, of the good news that I proclaimed to you, which you in turn received, in which also you stand, through which also you are being saved, if you hold firmly to the message that I proclaimed to you, unless you have come to believe in vain. For I handed on to you as of first importance that I in turn had received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures, and that he appeared and saved us, then to the 12. Then he appeared to more than 500 brothers and sisters at one time, most of whom are still alive, though some have died. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles. Last of all, as to one ultimately born, he appeared also to me.
Good evening, brothers and sisters.
Hi, Joe.
I heard my name out there. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe Krall. I'm a senior in mathematics and philosophy. Apparently, Jeremiah sent out a funny Facebook comment about something math-related that I'm going to do tonight. I have a Dino phone, so I don't get Facebook updates. So don't tell me what it was, and I'll laugh at it later. I want to start out by asking you all a question. Who here has read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Show of hands. Oh, lots of hands. Oh, I like to see that. Who here has watched the movie? Oh, lots of hands. There we go. Okay, great. This is good. This is good. Well, I'm going to tell you what you know already, but I want to draw out the beauty of the story of the Chronicles of Narnia, starting with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Gosh, I love this book. This is like my copy from like when I was 8 years old. So read. So many of you know the story. 4 children, World War II, Great Britain. They're evacuated from London. They go out to an old English country house. They're 2 brothers and 2 sisters, 4 siblings together. And they find this wardrobe, the title, and it's an opening to another world. It's a whole other world. It's a world full of mythical creatures and talking animals and dwarves and all this awesome stuff. But all is not right in the land of Narnia. This land of Narnia is ruled by a witch who has cursed the land with eternal winter. And the witch is ruthless and crushes all those who do not obey her. Yet there are some who resist, and the children meet 2 of the members of the resistance, who just so happen to be some talking animals, actually probably the funniest talking animals you can get, a pair of beavers, as a matter of fact, a husband and wife team whose names, surprisingly enough, are Mr. and Mrs. Beaver. There you go. And they take the kids to the Beaver's Dam, which is actually super comfy and cozy. It's like really warm there. It's not like cold or wet or anything. And they start telling the children stories about the resistance, a story about the leader of the resistance. And they call him names. They call him the king over the wood. They call him the son of the emperor over the sea. They call him the great lion. His name is Aslan, and his very name sends shivers up the spines of the children. And one of them asks, he isn't safe. He's this lion. That can't be safe. And Mr. Beaver responds, safe? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe. But he's good. He's the king, I tell you. For those of you who know this story, Aslan is, I won't give away the ending. If there's somebody here who hasn't read it, just go read it right now. Forget the terms. Aslan is one of the most powerful pictures of Christ that I have ever encountered. And the poetry and beauty of who Aslan is and what he does has stuck with me all through growing up. And so in my mind, there couldn't be a bigger contrast than what we just heard read from the scriptures. Because what Paul gives us isn't a beautiful, poetic picture. Instead, it's like he's reading off newspaper factoids. He's giving us a list of stuff, and he says it's really important. And we try to pay attention, but it's like, Paul, you're just giving us this list here. The first two items on his list are, Jesus died for our sins according to the scriptures. Got that, Paul. Heard that in Sunday school. We're good there. And then the next thing, Paul's like, no, really, you got to listen to this. He rose again according to the scriptures. And we're like, got it, Paul. Said that in the creed last week. Nothing new there. And then Paul goes on a tangent, or so it seems. He starts talking about all these people who saw Jesus. He goes, Jesus appeared to Peter, and he appeared to the 12 apostles. We're like, okay, where are you going with this? He appeared to 500 people all at once, and some of them are living, some of them have passed away. I'm like, okay, your point? James, he appeared to James, guys. He appeared to all the messengers sent out to tell the world about the gospel. Okay, Paul. And then finally Paul goes, he appeared to me as to the one untimely born. For those of you who know who Paul's story is, Paul persecuted the church until he had a dramatic encounter with the risen Jesus. He had an encounter with the risen Jesus. And friends, that's why Paul isn't making a big deal in this passage. He's not making a big poetic picture for us like C.S. Lewis does. Paul doesn't need to, because Paul is telling us something almost unbelievable. See, people heard about Jesus. People heard that he was healing. People heard of the thousands following him around. People heard that he ate with hordes of drunkards and tax collectors, defied the proprieties and the religious authorities of his day. And they heard about it too when the Roman authorities got wind of him, got wind of this new king in Israel. And they're like, we don't want that. We're Rome. We crush whoever's in front of us. And they did. They took Jesus, put him upon the cross, the most inhumane and horrible method of execution, and they crucified him. And there Jesus would stay buried and would be one in a long line of martyrs and witnesses to those who tried to love others. Another martyr crushed by the way the world works. Except that God looked down and said, not today. Not today. And Jesus rose from the dead. And what this means, friends, is that the fantasy book has become front page news. The myth has become history. God isn't an abstract object of our thoughts, our hopes, our dreams. God has lived and acted and moved in history. He has a birth date, he has a death date, he has a resurrection date. And his life now goes on, and his presence is here among us now. See, you don't get saved by believing a nice story somebody made up. You get saved when the author of your story reaches down, reaches out his hand and says, I love you. I died for you. I am alive for you. Follow me. And that, my friends, is a scary thought. And we back off. We back off. We don't want to get up. We don't want to follow him. And I'll tell you why. It's because we're scared. It's because we're scared. And that's why I think Paul talks about, unless you have believed in vain. And that's kind of a scary, ambiguous kind of phrase, so let me try to paint you a picture of what believing in vain looks like. So picture me, I'm like 11 years old, I just moved to Indiana, and I'm out in my front yard. This happens more than one time, actually. In fact, this happens regularly for over a couple of years. I'm out just dribbling the basketball. Take a shot, miss. Corner shot. Yes, made it. I'm feeling good now. So I'm there lost in my own head, and then I hear a sound coming down the street. I don't see anything yet, but I hear a sound. And I take my ball, and I go, and I walk away. Just walk away. I walk away. And I hide. I hide in my garage behind my minivan. And I'm looking out, and I watch as the school bus roars down the streets of my neighborhood. And I see the neighborhood kids walk down the street. And I wait, and then I go back out. Start dribbling my basketball again. Stop. Well, friends, why did I do that? It's kind of it's funny, it is funny. In a sad sort of way. I'll give you 3 reasons why, and none of them are any good. One of them was that I was new. I was a new kid in town. I didn't really know anybody. And number 2, I was shy. I didn't really want to get to know anybody. And number 3, I was homeschooled, which, I mean, I loved homeschooling in retrospect, but at the time I hated it because there these kids were, and they're like, who's this kid who isn't at school with us? You know, this is all in my head. You know, the social rejection always happens before it actually happens. You know, you play it out in your head, it's like, the kids hate me already, and so better just hide behind the minivan. And my parents told me, they're like, Joe, you don't have to be afraid. Your value does not depend on what those kids think. They probably don't even care. And I believed them. I believed them, all right. And then I went back out to dribbling, and then I'd go hide behind the minivan again. I believed in vain. And this is where it gets a little heavy, friends, because that's what we do. Because it's really easy to look out at the world around us. We don't see God. We don't think about it in a world of mass communication where anybody can talk to anybody, you know, whole side of the globe. You can talk to someone on the other side of the world. Languages are being translated, peoples are meeting each other, and yet somehow we still have war, we still have terrorism, and we still have genocide. You know, we're in a world where we're so technologically advanced. It's amazing what we can do to heal people, what we can do to provide for people. And yet, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have died today because of hunger. Thousands of people have died because of dirty water. You know, we send out millions of tweets, millions and millions of posts and emails, and yet somehow we're still so lonely. Hundreds of people today have committed suicide. In fact, somebody is committing suicide himself. Somebody. Because they don't see any hope. And we look at the world, and we look at how death and selfishness and violence rule over it, and we're like, okay, I'll make a deal with you, Death. You just leave me alone. Follow the status quo. Just let me have, you know, a nice life. Let me be with my family. You know, let me enjoy my friends. Let me enjoy my work. All right? That's the deal. And so we make our peace with death. But guess what? Death doesn't keep bargains. Death doesn't keep bargains. The sting of death is sin. Paul says later in 1 Corinthians 15. The sting of death is sin. And let me tell you what sin is, friends. Sin, we have such a wrong view of sin. We get it from movies and from TV shows. Sin isn't getting turned up and going to spring break. Sin isn't going to Vegas. Sin isn't a box of chocolates, an overpriced box of chocolates saying sinfully delicious dark chocolate. No, it's not. You want to know what sin is? Sin is 3 million people signing up for the Ashley Madison extramarital online affair website. 3 million people sign up for this website. 3 million people put their families on the line, put their jobs at stake, betray their integrity and transparency with their friends. Why? Why? Because we sin, people. Sin is the human propensity to screw things up. We do it. We do it. You know, every single one of us can look back in our lives and see relationships where we have hurt the other person and we have no good reason for doing so. We can look back and see the ways where we have hurt ourselves and twisted our souls, and there's no good reason for doing so. Friends, we can't even keep our little compromised deal with death. It just doesn't even work out. So friends, the upshot of all this is, we're practical atheists. We're practical atheists. We live as if God is dead. We live as if he's just an idea in our head. And you would be too if it was not for Jesus Christ. Let me tell you what Jesus said when he said about death and trouble and suffering. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but be not afraid. I have overcome the world. God raising Jesus from the dead is God saying, listen, this way of death and violence and sin, that doesn't triumph. Life triumphs. Love triumphs. Joy triumphs. God is love. And God, by sending his Son, has shown that he wins in the end. Jesus is the victor. Jesus is the victor over death. He has total victory over everything. He is total Lord over everything. And that means every single one of your lives. Every single one of your lives. He is victor over all your fears, victor over all your doubts, victor over all your addictions, all your broken relationships. He's there. Friends, there is a psalm, Psalm 46. I can't read the whole thing tonight. I encourage you to read it because it ends with one of the most marvelous proclamations of what our response is. God says to us, be still and know I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. That's what it's all about. Because if God is love, there can be nothing better than full surrender in every aspect of our lives to him. So friends, if nothing else, I want to challenge you tonight to be still. Be still. Because it's so easy in the day-to-day to move, to be busy. It's hard to be quiet. It's hard to stop and realize in the middle of your day that the frantic swirl of activity around you, that all your emotions, that all your thoughts are ultimately centered around the living Christ. But friends, that is what we must do. We must live. And it's going to sound impossible, but it's not. Because God has sent our spirits into God has sent his spirit into our spirits. Every breath we breathe is his and can be his, and we can breathe and walk and talk to our peers and study and lead and serve with full knowledge that God is in our hearts and breathing with us, breathing in our lungs, pumping the blood through our veins, guiding each interaction. We can have that. It's ours. We just gotta become aware of it. We gotta wake up. We gotta wake up from the spell. We gotta realize that just because trouble is coming down the street, we don't have to hide. We can face trouble head on. We can face the day head on. And the world and all its violence and sin cannot conquer us. In fact, we will conquer it. We will wage peace upon the world. We will wage love upon the world in the name of Jesus. Because he is Lord. He is Lord. And we need to do that together. We need to remind each other every day. We need to text each other. We need to talk to each other. We need to call each other. We need to pray with each other. Because we can't do this alone. Hebrews 3, 12 through 14 says this. Take care, brothers and sisters, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. Friends, unbelief causes us to forget that Jesus is alive. When we remember that Jesus is alive, our whole perspective changes. When we realize that Jesus is walking next to us, walking in front of us, walking behind us, and is approaching us in the face of the person we are about to talk to next, our whole mind changes. So exhort one another every day, as long as it is called today. It's not too late. Today you can still encourage someone. Today you can still encourage someone to follow closer after Jesus. You can still pray with someone today, so that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Death is a lie. Death is a lie, brothers and sisters. It has no power over us. Sin has no power over us. Though we are caught up in the tangles of this world, Christ has cut our cords and set us free. And we have come to share in Christ, if only we hold our first confidence firmly together. Friends, it's going to be hard, but it is worth it. Life is worth it. And I want to close with this before we pray. It's another Narnia story. It's from the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And so we're back in Narnia. Some of the same children have come along, but there's a new kid on the Narnia block, and his name is Eustace, Cousin Eustace. And the only way I can describe Eustace, he's a dud. The kid's a dud. He's in this land full of magic and wonder and beauty, and he's on a ship riding across the sea, seeing sea dragons and mermaids, and all he can do is complain about how much he hates sailing. The kid's a dud! What's the deal? And they land on this island, and the first thing he does, he wanders away from the group, which, as every scout knows, is never a good idea. And then he finds a cave with a big treasure in it, which everybody who's watched The Hobbit knows isn't a good idea either. There's no dragon in this treasure cave. So Eustace, being the dud that he is, picks up his golden bracelet, puts it on, and falls asleep on top of his new treasure hoard. Well, there's no dragon in the cave when he falls asleep, but when he wakes up, there is a dragon in the cave. He's been transformed. He's this big old dragon with nasty scales and big old wings and sharp claws, and he can breathe fire, which, granted, is kind of cool. But he can't talk, which definitely is not cool. Because when he tries to fly back to the camp, everybody freaks out. They start shooting at him. They don't know who he is. And eventually, he manages to, communicate with them. He scratches in the sand a little bit. He can't even spell anymore, his mind has been dragonified. And he's still himself, and he actually starts being a decent bloke. He starts, their mast had snapped off, so he goes and finds this tree on the other side of the island, and he starts actually being a decent kind of guy for a dragon. And but they can't take him with them. What are they going to do? And he knows this. And he realizes how much of a burden he had been before and how much of a burden he is now. And he flies to the other side of the island he's just feeling bad. And then Aslan shows up. And he tells the dragon boy to come follow him. And he leads him to this pool. And it's too small for him. It's too small to fit in. And so Eustace realizes that he's got to take off a layer of his skin, like a snake molting. So he scratches it off. He scratches off the skin. And there it lies on the ground. But he's still too big. And he scratches it off again. And he does it a third time and a fourth time. And he can't get it off. And Aslan goes, "You're going to have to let me do that." And Aslan takes his claws, and his claws are sharper than Eustace's. He rips it and then gash right through it. And again, and it hurts. Until the skin is lying on the ground, and Aslan picks him up, throws him, and out comes Eustace, up away again. Friends, transformation isn't going to be easy. Living out the life of Jesus isn't easy. But God did not raise Jesus from the dead to resuscitate him to a normal human life for another 30 years. And God is not raising us from our death just so that we can feel a little bit better about ourselves at the end of the day. With Jesus rising from the dead, life has eternal value and meaning. And if you are a follower of Jesus, your life has eternal value and eternal meaning. because you are following the one who is Lord over time, space. You are following the Lord of death and life, and he is on the side of life. And so we're going to take some time. We're going to take some time to pray together. We're going to have a time of silence. And Zach's going to come up. And, well, Zach or Evan, somebody who's